He looked like any other man, just trying to get home after a long day. His pace was slow, his breath heavy, but his mind was clear, focused on nothing more than dinner and rest. But in the shadows, danger waited. What happened next wasn't just another case of police harassment. It was a story of humiliation, resilience, and a shocking twist the officers never saw coming. This isn't just about one man, it's about the ugly truth hiding in plain sight. And when you hear what he did next, you'll understand why this story spread like wildfire. Marcus Johnson wasn't the kind of man who blended in. At nearly 350 pounds, he was a presence you couldn't ignore. People saw him and made assumptions: lazy, unhealthy, weak. But those who really knew him saw something else: intelligence, humor, and a heart that carried the weight of years of struggle. He worked as a data analyst, quiet, meticulous, and reliable. Every morning he woke up before dawn, catching the same bus, walking the same cracked sidewalks, and returning home to his small apartment in the same neighborhood he'd lived in for decades. Life wasn't easy, but it was predictable. Until one night shattered that routine. The evening air was humid as Marcus left the bus stop, his headphones tucked away, his backpack slung over his shoulder. Streetlights flickered overhead, and the world felt quiet. Too quiet. That's when he noticed it. A pair of headlights trailing him, moving slower than traffic should. His stomach tightened. He had been through this before, but he told himself not to panic. Maybe they weren't following him. Maybe this was nothing. But then the siren flashed. Just a quick chirp, enough to make his heart sink. The patrol car pulled up beside him, tires crunching against gravel. The door opened. Two officers stepped out, their flashlights already raised. Marcus stopped, hands visible. He had seen enough news stories to know what could happen if he made the wrong move. One officer barked a command, telling him to spread his arms. The other circled him, eyes scanning, judging. Their words weren't polite. They weren't curious. They were accusatory. "What are you doing out here? Where are you going? What's in the bag?" Each question sharper, dripping with suspicion. Marcus tried to answer, his voice calm, steady, but he could feel the weight of their gaze, like his body itself was a crime. His size, his skin, his very existence in that space became justification for their hostility. The flashlight beam lingered on his stomach, and one officer sneered, making a cruel joke about him running anywhere. The other laughed. Marcus felt his face flush with anger, but he stayed quiet. He knew better than to snap back. But inside, something was breaking. This wasn't just harassment. This was humiliation, designed to remind him of his place. The officers ordered him to empty his bag onto the sidewalk. Papers, a half-eaten sandwich, a worn laptop, all spilled out under their scrutiny. One officer kicked the sandwich aside with his boot. The other asked if he was carrying drugs. When Marcus denied it, they accused him of lying. The tension grew heavier. Every second felt like it could explode into violence. People began watching from nearby windows, some lifting phones to record. The flashing lights painted the street in harsh colors, and Marcus knew that if things went wrong, he could become the next viral video, another headline, another statistic. But what the officers didn't know was that Marcus had prepared for this moment. Months earlier, after witnessing a friend endure similar treatment, he had taken steps. He had installed a small body camera, hidden discreetly on his backpack strap, always recording during his commute. He had also spoken to a local journalist, promising that if something ever happened to him, he would share every second of footage. Tonight, that plan was in motion. As the officers shoved him against the car, patting him down roughly, the camera captured everything: their tone, their insults, their baseless accusations. They mocked his weight, laughed about how he would never outrun anyone, and even joked about locking him up just to teach him a lesson. Marcus stayed quiet, enduring the humiliation, but inside, he was no longer just a victim. He was gathering evidence. The climax came when one officer claimed to smell marijuana and moved to cuff him. Marcus's heart pounded. This was it, the moment where an innocent man could be dragged into a nightmare. But before the handcuffs clicked, a woman's voice cut through the air. A neighbor had been recording from her balcony. Others joined, shouting at the officers to stop, reminding them they were on camera. The crowd grew louder, bolder. The officers hesitated, their confidence cracking. Finally, after a tense pause, they shoved his belongings back at him and muttered a warning to watch himself. Then, just like that, they left. Marcus stood there, shaken but unbroken. He gathered his things slowly, his body trembling, his face hot with shame and fury. But he also knew something the officers didn't. Every second of that harassment had been captured in crystal clear detail, and he wasn't going to let it sit in silence. The next day, he sent the footage to the journalist. Within hours, the video was online. It spread like wildfire. Millions watched as the officers mocked, bullied, and tried to intimidate a man who had done nothing wrong. Outrage grew. Protests followed. The police department scrambled, issuing statements, suspending. The officers involved, but the damage was done. Their faces were etched into public memory, symbols of a system that too often sees black men as suspects first and human beings second. Marcus didn't see himself as a hero. He was still the same man, overweight, quiet, just trying to live his life. But his decision to prepare, to protect himself, had turned humiliation into resistance. His story became more than just another tragedy. It became a warning, a rallying cry, and proof that sometimes even the most ordinary person can expose extraordinary truth. And as the world debated, argued, and demanded change, one question lingered. How many more Marcus Johnsons will it take before this cycle ends? How many lives must be humiliated, threatened, or lost before society admits the truth? He had survived that night. But the fight for dignity, for justice, for humanity was far from over.